Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We are talking about the secrets of the night sky, and we're dealing with the month of Shevt, the month of Aquarius. Okay, so, just to put things in perspective, we know that every single month has a particular element that is associated with it. Every single month has a Hebrew letter that is associated with it. Every single Hebrew month has a particular tribe that is associated with it. And all those things help express some of the nature of the month itself. We said last week that the months that we're in right now, that we're dealing with, the month of Tevet, Shvat, and God willing soon, Adar, right, are all months that represent a tikkun, a reparation of the body. We said that Tevet has to do specifically with intimacy. We said Shvat has to do with food. Right? Tu B'Shvat is about making the new blessings on the food, and Adar is about drinking. These are all different aspects of the needs of the body itself. And these months represent an opportunity to go ahead and fix, repair those particular traits within the human body. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that the Mishnah in Perek Avot says, Ezu HaChacham, right? Halomed Mikol Adam. The wise man is someone who is open enough to learn from every single human being. Who is the smartest person, right? Haroeh Tanolad. The wise man is who sees things unfolding. In order for both of those things to be true, you have to have one trait. It's called humility. The humility to say, I want to look forward, and the humility to say that I can learn from anyone. Right? The wisest man in our community is called a Talmid Chacham. How do you translate those words, Talmid Chacham, into English? Talmid Chacham literally translates into a student of wisdom. Well, if he's the smartest guy, why is he still a student? Right? Because in order to achieve wisdom, you can never achieve wisdom. The closest thing you get to is someone who's disciplined in pursuing and understanding wisdom. That's the ideal. That is the greatest achievement you can have. Someone who dedicates his or her life to the pursuit of information and wisdom. Now, we're sharing this because of the nature of Aquarius. So we're going to go through some of the sources together, and then we're going to break down the actual meter. But just one idea I want to share before we actually get into that. Just the word for Shvat. Right? The word Shvat for the month of Shvat that we're talking about, Aquarius, okay, comes from the word, comes from several different words, but we know that the word Shvat numerically, every single Hebrew letter has a numerical value. The numerical value of Shvat is 314, okay? Shin, Bet, and Tav. 300, 2, and 9. Okay, so you have the word Shvat, remember that in Hebrew, the vet could also become a bet, okay? So you have the Shaddai in the word Shvat, the same numerical value. The numerical value of Shaddai is 314, yes? Yes, but then you take the three letters and you include the three letters also. That's right. This is like you take the three letters and you add it in.
Okay.
So it's a cheat for the number. Good. The word shoded in Hebrew, which literally means to break, right? It's hinting of the element of the month of judgment that we're in right now, also the month of Shvat. The word shadayim, right? The bosoms. Right, a source of nourishment to an infant is also found in the word Shvat, right? It's the idea that there's something about nourishing from the food of the month as well. And you also have this idea, the idea of Shakai, Shaddai, right? Which is also when God said to the world, enough. This expression of creating and boundaries and so on and so forth is also tied to the month of Shvat, the month of eating. Because we know what happens if we don't have boundaries when we eat. We get into trouble, lots of trouble. And therefore, part of the month of Shvat is about creating those boundaries. The idea of a staff, right, related to Shevt, right, is also tied to the word of Shvat. Okay, this is the month where we read about Moshe using his staff to bring the makot to the Egyptians. That is another expression of din, of justice, also that is happening during this time of the year as well. Okay, so there's all these interesting connections to this concept of boundaries, connection to something that expresses justice. Okay, the Midrash Tanchuma, number 1, says that the process of unfolding the purity of the soul continues during the days and the signs of Aquarius. Following upon the softening of the soul during the time of Capricorn, the purification occurs by one's immersion into the waters of the oral Torah, right? For the roots of the tradition is found in Moses' review of the Torah, which began on the first of Shvat. When Moshe was going in and reviewing the Torah Sheba'al Peh, it happens on the first of Shvat. As a matter of fact, there's a fascinating machloket in the Gemara itself that talks about this concept. There are two opinions as to when we celebrate Tu B'Shvat. What is the celebration of Tu B'Shvat? It's the celebration of when the trees begin to receive their sap, when the trees begin to awaken from their deep slumber. Okay, that's on the 15th of Shvat, the middle of the month. It's actually fascinating. As a side note, I'm not sure how much time all of you spend reading about astrology, but in the next month, right, there will be a complete planetary alignment of all the planets in our solar system, and you'll be able to see in the night sky for a whole month Mars, Saturn, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon completely aligned in our skyline. Now, this only happens once every 395, according to these sources, 95 million years. So it's a very unique, they call it the procession of the planets, or the planet parade, and it's happening now. What's that? You don't need a telescope. You don't need a telescope to see these. You'll be able to look at and see all of them in the sky.
Which day is going to be?
It's happening in a week. You'll be able to see all of it already. It's going to start lining up, and then for the next 4 weeks, you'll see it'll line up and then start moving apart. Anyway, so it's a very cool time that we're in right now. Anyways.
When it happened 300-something years ago, what happened during that time?
Oh, we don't know. It's hard to know. Hard to know what happens exactly, but we do believe in cause and effect. That the rotations of the planet somehow impact us. You know that Venus is the largest planet in our solar system, right?
Venus?
Is it Venus? No, I meant Jupiter. Sorry, I meant Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. Jupiter, okay, absorbs most of the comets and most of the debris that flies through our solar system. Jupiter is absorbing all that. It's so big, and that ring, everything that you see in our solar system is perfectly designed to protect the Earth itself. Do you understand that? It's not an accident. We're looking at a watchmaker situation. Perfect precision, distance, size of all the planets, so that you and I can have life on this little thing called Earth. Not an accident. So going back, the Mishnah says that there's all kinds of different holidays that have a Rosh Hashanah. So they're called Rosh Hashanah HaIlanot, the Rosh Hashanah of the trees. So it's actually a machloket, it's debate between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel as to when we celebrate this particular holiday. So Beit Shammai says it happens on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, on the first day of the month of Shvat. And Beit Hillel says it happens when? On the 15th day of Shvat. So my obvious question is, well, what are they arguing about? I don't understand. If you're talking about when a holiday is, the Rosh Hashanah of the trees, I can understand why on Shabbat you have two opinions if it starts at 5:15 and 5:25. Talking about a 7-8 point minute difference. But we're talking about a 2-week gap. How does that happen, right? How are we so dysfunctional when it comes to our time? So what is the machloket about? The machloket is about how we start counting this particular idea, right? I'll explain what I mean. Sorry, I'm not being clear. We know that every single system in Judaism can be broken up into a system of thirds, right? The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that the world as we see it today will exist for 6,000 years, okay? And in the 6,000 years, you'll have these 3 sections of 1/3. The first is the first 2,000 years of that history is called Tohu, chaos. The mid 2,000 years is called Torah. The last 2,000 years is called Mashiach, the Messianic time. We're currently in that system. We're in the year 5,785. We're in the Mashiach era of this system. Okay. Now, having said all that, this system of thirds describes and defines the nature of all things, even human beings. We also go through a section of thirds. The first third of your life is from 1 to 20. Okay, and that time is called chaos. I don't have to explain it. You all understand what I'm talking about, right? The second phase of that, from 20 to 40, is called Torah. Torah comes with hora'ah. It's instruction. It's about developing yourself, figuring out who you are, where you're going, what kind of world you want to live in, what kind of life you want to have, what kind of family you want to have, what kind of world you want to create for yourself. And then Mashiach, last third, okay, is the time where you actualize your ideas and live it. That's what Mashiach is. Messianic time is a time where there is a unmitigating ability to live out your Torah ideals, to live out your Jewish faith, nothing standing in the way. No Yetzer Hara, no government, no craziness, no financial issues. You are just open to just practice, period. That's what Mashiach means. Now, what happens with the rest of my time, Rabbi? I'm not going to only live until I'm 60, right? So fascinatingly, we know that we say, Ki shivim shana yemei ha'adam. That's what King David says. Man's life expectancy is 70. Now, we know that people live beyond their 70th birthday, right? So the Mishnah in Kohelet says, Ben shmonim kikof. Someone who's 80 is like a monkey. Now, what does he mean? The last third of our lives, which is beyond that, is really a monkey see, monkey do attitude. You are who you are based on all the choices you've made. And it becomes much more difficult to change. That means we have had 70 years of life to make a choice of who we want to be. And then at some point we get stuck. It gets much more difficult to change. And you see this in older people. They're stuck in a particular mindset. They're much more slow to change, much more difficult to change their opinion on things. They're still obsessing about things that happened 50 years ago. They can't let go. The scariest part of getting old is not being able to tell new stories. Is you become like a monkey. Monkey see, monkey do. All you are is a reflection of all your choices. So this concept of, this 6,000 years or thirds of, tohu, chaos, that leads to Torah and Mashiach is an opportunity for growth and change. Now, we take that idea and we apply it to the month itself or to the calendar. The calendar begins with a section of thirds. The first third of the calendar is the first 4 months. When does that start on? It starts the first month of the calendar. What's that first month? From Rosh Hashanah until Shevt is exactly 4 months. So the first third of the calendar, Hebrew year, is called chaos. And if you think about it, it's so true actually. From when Rosh Hashanah starts until now, it's just like this whole thing is just going crazy, crazy, crazy. The holidays and the fast and the Sukkah and then the whole thing is just like a blur. Until Hanukkah, it finally slows down. As a matter of fact, if you know kids that are in Israel right now, they say the most growth that happens in the year in yeshiva is from Hanukkah until Pesach. It's clear. There's no disruption. Nothing crazy. It is a time for you to excel and grow and develop yourself. 10 weeks of uninterrupted focus. Okay? So the first third of the year is called tohu, chaos. The next third is called Torah. Right? Torah begins with Shvat. Now the machloket between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai is about, when does it start? On the 1st of the month or the 15th of the month? So now, what are they arguing about? Well, when do we pray for rain? So we pray on Sukkot, which is the 15th of Tishrei, not Rosh Hashanah. So according to Beit Shammai, no, we start with Rosh Hashanah at the beginning of the year. According to Beit Hillel, says no. We start with when we pray for rain because that's what impacts the trees. The chaos to growth starts exactly 4 months from Sukkot until the 15th of Shvat. And that's how the halacha goes. We go with Hillel, not with Shammai over here. Okay? When the trees are able to pull up that sap, starts with the beginning of the year on Sukkot. That's what we're praying for. Now, it begins to pull that sap so those trees begin to bud, and we start seeing a change in nature. Remember, everything that happens on the physical plane is a reflection of what's happening on the spiritual plane. So in the month of Shvat, where that growth starts again with the trees, that means you and I need to be budding as well. You and I can pull up the spiritual sap, so to speak, from this new era of Torah that's happening so that we can pull it into the world right now. Now think about it. From Shvat, right, until Pesach, okay, is Torah, right? That's the next 4 months. The last 4 months is Mashiach, which we never actualized. That's the 17th of Tammuz, is instead of us going on a graph straight up, right? We go up and we come straight down after Shavuot. Because of the Chet HaEgel and Tisha B'Av, Shavuot B'Tammuz, all those holidays are going down and then the cycle starting again. Okay? But now we're in these months are an opportunity for growth and development. Let me ask you this question. How tall does a tree grow?
Depending on the design of the seed.
No. Ready? As tall as it can. You like that? A tree grows as tall as it can. What about you? What about us? How great can we become? As much as we want. Right? Now, wanting is not the same as it can. Right? I want to be great. That's very nice. You're not going to go anywhere if you want things. The only way you grow is by doing things. The month and the letter that we're talking about, Shvat, the letter is tzaddik, right? The letter for the month of Shvat is a tzaddik. Why? The tzaddik is someone who expresses justice. He is someone that is organized, someone that is disciplined, someone that is looking for truth, someone that is humble enough who could find all these things, right? And then be persistent about making sure they grow as tall as they can, right? Which is a hard concept to swallow, but I'm sure all of you are wonderful people. If you're listening to this, you're amazing, right? But who could you have been, or what can you be if you push yourself a little bit more, right?
Rabbi,
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Just remember, Birkat HaIlanot, we do it the month of the Iyar. And if we count it, 9 months is Shabbat.
Yes.
And also during this time, I remember when I go to my grandmother's farm during the vacation time, my cousin and I, we use a stick. It's
Yeah.
a staff.
Uh-huh.
And we have lots of seeds on our pocket. And that's the time that we
Plant.
So that by springtime,
That's everything's ready. Right? Yeah, yes, there's no question there's an agricultural aspect to it, which we're so disconnected from. We don't even see the trees blooming anymore. Right? Well, all the trees in California are gone now. Right? Not all of them, but we don't live in that world. We're so removed. There was a time where we understood that the agriculture itself was giving us a prompt to think about spiritual things. That's gone. If we're not having the conversation about our months, if we're not spending time thinking about what happens on an astrological plane, we're not even connected to any of these powers spiritually. There's a power in each month. There's a power that you and I are supposed to be thinking about during the month itself, but we don't even think about it anymore. We don't think about the influence of the month on me. I could tell you right now, the amount of phone calls I've received since the month of Tevet started for Shalom Bayit has increased by 100. And it happens every single year because that's the month of intimacy. It's the month of closeness. It's the summer. It's the coldest part of the winter. You're home. You're stuck. You're seeing too much or too little, and you're complaining about it, right? And I'm getting those phone calls. I see it. I'm lucky that I'm in a position where A, I get to prepare these kinds of classes and I get to think about it, and B is because I'm working in the community, I see these things becoming a reality. But we're so distracted in the world that we're in, we're not even thinking about these things. So how are we bringing these ideas into our home? How are we teaching our children to be more mindful of the change of nature? We say that, Pasuk says, Ki ha'adam etz hasadeh, man is like the tree of the field, right? And there's a deep correlation between the trees and humanity. And this is the month we're talking about, Shvat, trees and people. So how is a man or human beings like a tree? Right? So, what's that? Right? This is my favorite line. It's from the Shem Shmuel. You know what he says? He says that just like trees have seasons, people have seasons. Right? There are times where your branches are filled with leaves. There's times where there's fruits on those branches, and there's times where they're not. They're all gone. There's times in the year where the tree looks and feels dead. Nothing's happening in there. No movement, no life. And then somehow it blooms again. Right? And it begins to produce and create and so on and so forth. It becomes energetic and alive with color and so on and so forth. So these are periods of change that we need to be sensitive to. and remind ourselves about.
What about the redwood trees in California?
Yes, what about them? They're beautiful.
18 people can hug it.
Yeah.
No redwood trees grow like that anymore.
Well, that's because they're saying the reason why they don't grow like that anymore is because of the amount of oxygen in the planet. There was a lot more oxygen in the world before, and as a result of it, the trees grew taller. As a matter of fact, actually, it's not oxygen; it's carbon. One of the things that people don't know, but the more carbon you have in the world, the more the trees can absorb the carbon and grow. This is a combination of these two things. Now, what's interesting is that a tree is the inverse of a human being. Is the inverse of a human being. Trees can't move, right? We create carbon; they create oxygen. Now, if you created a closed system and you put a tree and a human being in that box, what would happen? What ended up happening is that the person would be becoming smaller and smaller, and the tree would be getting bigger and bigger. Right? My grandfather always told me that during the spring, don't stand near trees. They sap your energy as they're growing. That's what he told me. Right? All those trees. That's so they sap your energy. Now I don't know how true that is. This is his own whatever misarad that he had, and so on and so forth. I'm sure there's some truth to it. Anyway, Kitsur is like this. So the trees and human beings have an interesting correlation in that they're opposites. Let me tell you how they're opposites. Ready? The source of a tree's energy comes from where? The roots. The roots. Right? From the soil. Right? Not from water. Okay? Comes from the roots. Now, can you see the roots? Most of the time, no. So it's drawing its potential from a place that's unseen. Where are you, or humans, getting their source of potential from? It's coming from a spiritual plane above. So in the same way that trees are able to draw out potential from a place that cannot be seen, human beings are able to draw potential from a place that cannot be seen. Right? There's an inverse. There's actually a company in Italy, this was in the New York Times about 5 years ago. I forget the name of it. They created a special pod that you buried your loved one in. And it's a big seed. And what ends up happening is that you put your deceased family member into this pod, and you bury it, and a tree will grow. And the tree's nourishment comes from the decaying body. So what ends up happening is that the tree becomes the person that was in that pod. Now the truth is, from halachic place, this would be very complicated. You cannot, it's like going to a cemetery. You can't have any hanaf, and that is a super complicated thing. Yeah, well, it's not so bad. In New York this past year, they created a new way to bury people because there's an issue of land. So we're talking about, taking people to a crematorium, and crematorium is very dirty. So they found a clean way to do it now. A clean way to get rid of bodies, not through crematoria anymore. They do use water. They put the body into a high pressure saline water system, and it completely melts the body within a few hours. There's nothing left, not even bones. It liquefies everything.
What do you do with the water?
You sell it for drinking water. What do you mean? That's what you do with it. You could pour it back into the ocean, into the river. It goes back into the rivers, and you drink it. That's what they want. That's what they want. It's more expensive than crematoria, but this is what they're pushing right now. They're trying to get some kind of tax rebates for these kinds of things. What?
There's bone. It's not supposed to decay.
It will with this. Even in a crematoria, it does not get. You can't destroy the loose bone, but with this you can. This is like a power washer, just like.
Who wants to do this?
What's that?
Who wants to do this?
The city. The city wants to.
The city of New York?
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, they're not going to pass it for religious reasons. They can't force you to do it. But the fact that someone thought of a way to liquefy a body is
There's no process of the
yeah. It's not even ashes. Ashes creates. Oh yeah, it's like acid. Yeah. Think of it like a power washer. If you have like a power washer, you could write your name in stone. And if you leave the power washer long enough, you'll turn the stone into sand. That's what it does to the body, but just liquefy, even the sand gets liquefied into a liquid. Everything is liquefied. All right, anyway. So, okay, we had massive tangents over here, and these are not at all the things that I want to talk about, but it's all good. So let's look at number 2. The B'nai Yisrael says, according to astrology, Dali, that's the Aquarius. Dali is a bucket, right? The symbol for the month of Aquarius is literally the heavenly bodies pouring water into the earth, and that's connected to the month of Shvat, is the sign of the Jewish people. For although Israel is above the constellations, and although prayers and good works can obtain their true desire regardless of determination of the constellations, their natural manifestation is associated with an astrological sign, and that is the month of Shvat, or Aquarius. Sefer Yetzirah says the stomach, where digestion occurs, is the bodily organ associated with Dali. Okay? The rectification of eating this month's excessive nature in holiness is essential to one's purest of righteousness. The month's letter, Tzaddik. The bucket, the Dali, is a sign of Israel because its sole purpose is to draw water. The water is a symbol for Torah. This indicates that Israel's essential purpose of creation is to serve God through the Torah. And even if the judgment of the constellation issues decrees, one's work in the Torah and its law shall return to it and turn that decree into all of its good. So the month itself is this weird place because it's a month of justice. How much food are you going to have? How much water? Parnassah. It's all tied to this month of Shvat. Okay? But the way in which we break out of the harsh judgment of the month is by connecting to the power of the month itself. The power of the month is for us to become righteous. Righteousness requires discipline. Discipline, okay? And it's tied to food, by the way. Right? It's always tied to food. It's all part of the same thing. I have never met someone who's disciplined, okay, that is struggling with their weight, right? It's just somehow, unless they have a physical issue, generally speaking, right? Disciplined people are disciplined in one area. You're usually disciplined in all area. You're undisciplined in one area of your life. You're usually undisciplined in all areas. It haunts you. It doesn't flip, right? I say this all the time. Midot don't split.
So if I get more disciplined, I'll lose all my weight?
Yes, 100%. 100%. It's all about discipline. And discipline, by the way, is connected to justice, to din itself, right? So, for example, the tzaddik, right, means righteous, right? The word tzedek, tzedakah, comes from the same word, right? What do they have in common? Justice, tzedakah, is my obligation, my responsibility. It's not chesed, not the chassid. It's different. The chassid, the word chesed means to do things without any boundaries, right? The chassid means undisciplined, whereas the tzaddik means to be disciplined. And through that discipline of growth and development in this month, you're able to draw out a power and potential that can change the harsh nature of the month itself. B'nai Yisrael, number 4, Shvat is a month that draws abundant blessing, right? It's confirmed in the tribe that represent it, to whom the blessing was given. As for Asher, Ashirut, right? Asher means wealthy. The fat is his produce. Fat as an oil is similar to Torah. Just as the oil separates from all the liquids and maintains its purity, so too it is with the wisdom of the Torah if we use it to maintain those boundaries, right? The word for holiness in Hebrew is Kedusha. I often have this conversation with some of the young couples that are getting married. I ask them, well, what makes a marriage holy? It's a good question, right? What makes a marriage holy? What makes a marriage holy is when two people say to the other that I am to you and to you alone. When you create a restriction on yourself, a boundary on yourself, and the other person does, well, that is where the sanctity of marriage comes from. It's not just, oh, my promise. A promise is not good enough. The sanctity of marriage is the promise that I will be to you and to you alone and only you, and vice versa. The month of Shvat is about tapping into the Kedusha, the holiness of the month, by creating boundaries, right? That's what we're trying to do here. The first boundary is of the mouth. It's interesting, the only opening in our body that has two gates is the mouth. You got your lips, you got your teeth. So if one fails, then use the other one, right? Shut your mouth. First step to losing weight is to shut your mouth. Eat less is the only way to lose weight. Okay. Now it's interesting that the sign of the month is the stomach. It's all connected, right? It's a one whole system. The element of the month of Shvat is air. Air is essential for the continued sustenance of the physical body. You can't breathe, you can't grow. From that we can derive the underlying understanding about, on the page, the special quality of the month, which is the period of the beginning and unfolding of the oral tradition. The other months of those elements of air is Sivan, when the Torah was given, the month of Sinai, the month, and Tishrei, when the second tablets were containing the Ten Commandments were issued. So you have this air is associated with breathing, and in those months you have this concept of Torah flowing, specifically Torah Shabbat Peh. Okay, and those are all air months. And we'll talk about the air sign. We'll talk about the months and their character traits soon. They're all interconnected. B'nai Yisachar. In the numerical value of the month's name, 311. Right, the name is the word Ish, man. Right, appellation Ha'ish Moshe. The letters of the word Ish, Aleph, Yod, Shin signify the source of effluence, right, or affluence. Ibid, the heavenly body that influences the Aquarius, is Saturn, Shabtai. It is also influences the sign of Capricorn. This means that it is a time for contemplation. For Saturn excels in its influence on understanding, and thus it is conducive for an impartial review of one's life and repentance from one's depth of one's heart. The letters forming the acronym Shovavim indicate that repentance depends on deep self-understanding and refraining from repeating one's mistake. That's what this month is supposed to do. We're supposed to tap into that energy and ask ourselves who we want to be, and then just go there. Pri Tzaddik says as follows. He says that according to astrology, those born under the influence of Dali, Aquarius, reveal a talent for, ready, originality, and possesses boundless inquisitiveness. Many scientists, including Copernicus and Galileo, were born in Aquarius, or Aquarians. Chadushi Harim, Tu B'Shvat, the wisdom of understanding always operate together. Wisdom and understanding always operate together. Chokhmah and Bina. This idea is symbolized by the fact that the first renewal of growth in trees is discernible during the month of Shvat. The tree symbolizes the written Torah, and its fruits symbolize the oral tradition, which draws sustenance from the written Torah, just as fruits draw sustenance from the tree. Here we find a clear example of how the physical parallels the spiritual. The name Shvat is related to the word shofet, judge, because during the month one receives divine judgment on the spiritual sustenance of the whole year for the capacity of originality and understanding of the oral tradition. This parallels the fact that the 15th of Shvat is a New Year's Day for the trees, when the judgment on the quality and the quantity of the next year's produce is divided and ordained. That is that month. The month determines your ability to draw out the food or parnasa that is latent in your potential in the year. Number 10, the Gra. The fact that this month is a source of inspiration for the new ideas in the Torah may also be explained astrologically, meaning that all your Torah ideas that you're going to have this year comes out from your ability to meditate and think about the month of Shvat. That's what you're asking for in the month of Shvat. You want to be praying for clarity. You want to be praying for chidushim, right? This also explains the astrological precognization of the Aquarians are creative, because of the principle that when well springs are open, they flow in two directions, to the spiritual wisdom of the Torah and to the natural wisdom of science. In fact, the Zohar predicted that there would be a great opening of wellspring of wisdom, continuing from the year Tav Resh onward. Beginning at that time, we noticed a significant increase of wisdom both in spiritual and the secular. That happened in the year 1840. The Zohar predicted in the year 1840 there'll be a massive revolution that happens in the world of understanding. That is when the Industrial Revolution and the Scientific Revolution all happened, and so much of the great things that you and I are able to achieve right now, having this camera up here recording me and the sound and the video, the lights and the heat, all of this is because of that revolution. We would never have that. It happened with this opening. Midrash Rabbi Tanchum Shemot says each plague lasted a month, right? And the last three plagues, which led to the downfall of Egypt, began during Shvat. These three plagues are associated with the attributes of understanding, wisdom, and the crown, all correlated to this concept of understanding and wisdom. The Shem Shmuel says the month of Shvat is a time when anybody, no matter how far he is from holiness, may easily come closer to God and renew himself by detaching himself from sinful past. In the context of Judaism, these qualities need to bring a person to spiritual renewal, to complete repentance, and to his liberation from of misdeeds of his past. It's all about, again, this concept of Teshuvah. In the same way the world is renewing, you have to be thinking about how you are going to renew yourself. The difference between the two halves of the month is also seen in the tribe representing in it, Asher, whose land is blessed with olives and oil. According to our sages, olives eaten alone may sometimes cause forgetfulness, whereas olive oil is good for reinforcing memory, which is why you have to eat them together. The difference between the olive and the olive oil is that the oil is made by squeezing and grinding the olive. Similarly, during the month of Shevt, a person may undergo a fundamental change as a result of him doing penitence after days of Shovim, which are set aside for repentance. This week is Parshat Shemot. Shovim are the parshiot we read up until Shevt, during the month of Shevt itself, and it's a time for inner growth and reflection. The month that we're in of Tevet is in preparation for the month of Shevt for that growth and change. Okay? One other thing about olives and oil. We know that the symbol for Jewish wisdom is the olive oil. And the symbol for Greek wisdom was the olive itself, the olive reef, right? So now the difference is that in the Greek world, they believed in a world that was very material. A world that could only be measured and seen exists. If you can't see it, can't measure it, it's not real. Okay? So the difference is like this. As Jews, we believe that wisdom comes from crushing the olive and ripping out the juice inside of it, and not stopping there, by the way. Taking a wick and lighting it and bringing light into the world. For the Greeks, it was about creating the perfect olive and stopping there. It was only about the body, only about the externalities, only about the things that can be touched and seen. And that's the difference, and that's part of what's being reflected in this idea. The intermingling influences of the planes of wisdom and understanding in the month of Shevt points to its being a time for spiritual renewal, whose fullness is achieved by one's observance of the ways of the Torah, the pursuits of holiness through eating, the main form of divine service for the month, in the form of the righteous man is to the satisfaction of his body. In the beginning of the process of divine service that culminates during the month of Nisan with the holiday of Passover, when the ritual eating the paschal sacrifice and the mazalot, unleavened bread, takes place. The unification of judgment and grace on the 15th day of Shevt, the new year, for the fruit-bearing trees, denotes the rectification of the sin of the eating of the tree of, that's right, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The eating of the fruit of this tree brought about the hiding of the divine providence with the separation of the worlds of action and the material world. There was a time where the spirituality and the material were all intermingled in one. There was no distinction. That's why we call this world an olam de shikra, a world of lies. This world does not express its truth. We talk about, near-death experiences. There was a book that came out about 15, 20 years ago. I forget the name of the professor who did research on 100 people that passed away and came back again. There's one story in particular that stands out the most to me. It was a woman, she was 54, she became blind when she was young as a child. She died. She was dead for like 47 minutes. Right. Pronounced dead. And she came back to life. So when she came back to life, the doctors asked her, like, well, what happened? She's like, oh my gosh. She's like, I had an out-of-body experience. I saw myself hovering over my body. Remember, she's blind. She's like, we know that they always say this is a common thing, it's part of this chemical that's released in your body, and this and that, it's not real. She's like, doctor, she's like, I tell you that what's inscribed in the painting behind the bed I was in. I could tell you how many pens and pencils are in your pocket. I could tell you where all the nurses in the room were standing. And she started describing in detail what she saw as something hovering over her body. Okay, that one scared me very deeply. Because we're talking about consciousness leaving the body and existing outside of the body. Now, I'm sharing that because, people often think about the end as the end, right? We believe in a soul. It's real. Can I prove it? Do I have scientific evidence that says it's true? No, I don't. But I don't need to prove it. That I have an intuitive understanding there's something much more than just me being me, right? And so therefore, you have to remember that I'm sharing this because we're talking about the month of Shevt. The month of Shevt, the month of Aquarius, is a time for us to think about who we want to be. If you are a soul and not a body, then what makes you unique is your ability to choose to want to become something more. You're not cause and effect. You're not just a bunch of accidents. You're not just someone who has no free will. To be a human being means you can choose. And the question we need to be asking ourselves is, who do we want to be? And it's never too late to ask that question. Because you all can become more. There needs to be a refining of the character, a developing of the self, a growing of the human spirit, a deepening of self. And I understand why you couldn't do it up until the month of Shvat, because it's cold, you're trying to survive, you have survival's mentality, and you're distracted. But the month of Shvat is the beginning of change. The winter's gone. The world's about to produce this amazing light and warmth. And it's going to have all the fruits and food you could possibly imagine. What's your reason for ignoring the development of the self? Okay, Aquarius. Shvat. Let's talk about the overview, okay? The element we said is air. Air is the power of being communicative, it's intellectual, it's expressive and logical. Okay, it's a humanitarian. Aquariuses are honest, loyal, inventive, independent, as we saw. Challenges can be unpredictable, contrary, detached, and indifferent, because they're so lost in their mind. They're so intellectual, they don't know how to relate to the people around them. The nature is generally kind, tranquil, but excessive calmness can lead to indifference. We talk about always wanting to be balanced. The weakness of being balanced is being indifferent. I'm good, I don't care. I'm balanced, not doing anything, being stuck. It can also be an expression of being balanced.
Where does this come from? Because they're all positive things.
I start that way.
I'm sorry?
I always start with the positive. I'm not gonna start with the negative. We're gonna get to the negative stuff. Don't worry about it. Okay. Aquarius in comparison to other elements. Okay, we have air signs: the Libra, the Aquarius, the Gemini, intellectual, communicative, logical, and expressive. Fire signs: impulsive, energetic, and exciting. Earth signs are rigid, stubborn, and practical. Water signs are sentimental, emotional, and kinesthetic. Even though Aquarius shares the air element with Libra and Gemini, it is not very similar. Air elements do not carry the emotional depth associated with water elements. They're different. So even though you share an element, the way that element expresses itself in the month itself is different, because the month impacts the element's ability to express itself. Okay, these are key characteristics. They enjoy defying public opinion. They're non-conforming, they're contrarians, often creating their own style, a mix of cold, practicality, and eccentricity. Does things in unique and interesting ways. His intuitive empathy, particularly with mentally challenged or distressed, can calm hysterical and frightened individuals, including children. Revolutionary and idealistic. Many Aquarians are inventors, deep thinkers, but most ideas remain in the dreaming stage. They have a hard time going out and making things real. Witty, funny, but often very stubborn and always feels misunderstood. Open-minded and liberal, able to tolerate diverse types of people, and that is part of their weakness. Relationships and friendships. Values equality, seeks friendship with all types of people, regardless of class or status. Maintains friendships with exes, right? You ever see that? Remains cold towards individuals and big egos. Gives opinions freely, but does not impose them. Dislikes being told what to do. Rarely fights for causes, but is deeply empathetic, preoccupied with understanding suffering. Meaning, it's more about the intellectual understanding of the idea versus actually living with the people. Dislikes confrontations, remains fixed in opinions, even if distracted in debate, can't understand the environment intuitively. Okay, generally absent-minded in terms of their professional habits, so if you want to hire an Aquarius, be careful. You don't want them to be your secretary. They dislike rigid schedules or pressure. They want the time to think and absorb, commits fully when given their word, but prefers not to be pinned down. Hates lying, hypocrisy, and cheating, and dislikes borrowing or lending money to maintain independence. I don't want to be tied down to anything. Values paying debts and keeping promises, will end friendships over broken trust. Okay? Aquarius men and women also, they express themselves differently. Loyal, platonic in friendships with scattered interests and selfless nature. Aquarians will trust others and is rarely jealous, dislikes extravagance and avoids expensive, wasteful gifts. forgetful but surprises partners with affection at unexpected times. Money is not a priority. Most are not materialistic. Now let's see the female version of Aquarian. Faithful, but emotionally detached. Seeks freedom, but remains completely devoted. Uninterested in wealth or material possessions, not physically expressive, but graceful and witty. Sensitive and intolerant of infidelity. Will walk away from an unfaithful or broken promise. They don't care about being totally committed in that way. They're more about truth. Keeps motives hidden, but is truthful and well-mannered. Often disregards modern style, choosing individuality over conformity. Gentle and devoted to children, especially during times of illness. Very tolerant and understanding. Able to turn tears into laughters. Okay, this is the advice. Last piece of advice for the interacting with Aquarius. Respect their dependence and avoid being overcritical. Don't talk down to them or impose rigid expectations. Be mindful of their forgetfulness and help with small tasks when needed. Allow them freedom to express themselves uniquely and at their own pace. Build trust slowly as they value honesty and loyalty above all. Complicated in nature, but no question, if they are able to refine all these talents, they can do amazing things for the world. Amazing people. But remember that every trait has a positive expression and a negative expression. Your job is to find the balance, and being balanced doesn't mean being indifferent. It means being pulled in two different directions and struggling with it. That's how you are able to elevate the particular powers of the month of Shvat or the month of Aquarius. Have a great day. God willing, we'll pick up next week.